Welcome back to Projects with Everyday Dave. Inverter technology is changing rapidly and it's getting better all the time. One of the best improvements, in my opinion, is all-in-one split-phase solutions. It used to be if you wanted to have 120 volt and 240 volt, you needed two inverters. That's no longer the case. I have three split-phase inverters in front of me. The EG4 and the SolArk I borrowed from friends who are installing systems, and this one Sungold Power sent me for a future project. I'm not trying to sell you on any of these solutions. Rather, these three units are a great illustration of the wide range of price and capability. So we're going to walk through a comparison of the specs and why you might want to choose one over the other to meet your specific needs. I've pulled together most of the key specifications into three charts for easy comparison. Of course, there are lots of other details, but these will give us a good overview. I'll include all of that information in links in the description below, and you can peruse through it at your convenience. Starting with the lowest cost option, the EG4 6000EX48HV. This unit is only $1,249 at the time of this recording, if you can get one. Signature Solar is currently out of stock, but you can pre-order it. It's not configured for grid feedback in the US, but it's a great choice for emergency home backup and budget off-grid. This unit has a weatherability rating of IP21, so it's only meant to be mounted indoors. It's rated for 6,000 watts, which is 3,000 watts per phase. But because it's a low-frequency inverter, it's great for starting heavy induction loads like well pumps and air compressors. You can identify it as a low-frequency inverter by this giant square transformer, which has a center tap for the 120 volt output. The more expensive Victron that we installed a few weeks ago has a more efficient toroidal transformer. However, even with this low-cost square transformer in this unit, it still does very well with a 93% peak efficiency. If you're using the 6000EX for a completely off-grid setup, you will want to consider the impact of the 115 watt idle consumption. Even if there's no load, you'll be consuming 115 watts continually, so be sure to adjust for the additional 1.4 kilowatt daily consumption when sizing your batteries and solar input. Low-frequency inverters are known for their ability to manage surge loads, and this one can support up to 9,000 watts for 10 seconds, over 9,000 watts for 5 seconds, and up to 12,000 watts for 1 full second. As an entry-level unit, it has only one AC input. So if you're using it for home backup, I suggest using a transfer switch like this one. It will allow you to run your emergency circuits and charge the batteries from the grid. If the power goes out, the unit will automatically switch to batteries as the input. Then if the batteries get low and there's no solar available, you can turn on a generator and switch the transfer switch over to generator input. In this way, you can have a very low cost and capable emergency backup system. This inverter has a decent warranty of 3 years, but if you pair it with EG4 batteries, which are also a great value solution, it increases the warranty to 5 years. As an all-in-one solution, even this budget-friendly version has very capable PV input. The max PV input is 7,500 watts, and it comes with a very respectable 500 volt maximum input. It has only one MPPT, but the tracking range is 120 volts to 480 volts, and the max current is the highest of all three units at 27 amps. One thing you don't get with the budget model is AC coupling of existing PV inverters. You will need to pair this inverter with 48 volt batteries. As a starting point, I would recommend getting a minimum of 2 EG4 48 volt server rack batteries. This unit can provide a very capable 120 amps of charging current, and I couldn't find the max discharge current, but I'm sure it's at least 120 amps as well. It has an RS-485 port for connecting to the battery BMS for automatic management and tracking of battery capacity. One thing to keep in mind, you will need external breakers and switches for the AC and PV connections, as there are none built into this unit. All in all, it's a very impressive set of specs at this price point. For not a whole lot more, at a current price of just over $2,000, you can step up to the Sungold Power Bluepower IP6048. It is also rated for 6,000 watts or 3,000 watts per phase. It's a high-frequency inverter, which is usually more efficient, so I was surprised that the DC to AC efficiency is only 91%. and the idle consumption is the highest at 120 watts. These are important factors to consider if you're operating off-grid. However, if you're wanting a grid tie solution with the option of emergency backup, this is one of the lowest cost points of entry. In fact, the system doesn't require batteries for operation, so you can always add them later when your budget allows. Even though this is a high-frequency inverter, it still has a very respectable surge load capacity. It can support up to 9,000 watts for 10 seconds, 9,000 watts for 5 seconds, and the 1 millisecond overload limit is 19,000 watts. This unit has 2 AC inputs, which allows you to eliminate the external transfer switch. In a power outage, it can charge the batteries and run the house with PV. If you have a generator with remote start and the batteries get too low, it can automatically switch over to the generator input and start it up. Once the batteries are charged, it can automatically shut it off. With an IP65 rating, this unit can be mounted outside if needed. It meets UL 1741 and IEEE 1547 standards, and it comes with a 2-year warranty. This all-in-one inverter has a max PV input of 7,500 watts, managed through 2 MPPT controllers. It has the highest max input voltage at 600 volts and the widest operating range from 120 to 550 volts. It's good that it has such a high input voltage because the max current is only 15 amps. Although it has 2 inputs per MPPT, to minimize the impact of the limited max current, you would want to avoid parallel string connections and put your panels in series up to the max voltage. Another great feature for this price point is the capability of AC coupling with existing PV inverters. That will allow you to take advantage of the power from a grid tie inverter that would normally be unusable in a power outage. Be sure to confirm compatibility with your existing inverter. If you're adding battery storage, you will need to pair this inverter with a 48-volt battery. Again, I would recommend starting with at least 2 48-volt server rack batteries. This unit can provide a respectable 120 amps of charging current and up to 150 amps of discharge current. It has an RS-485 port for connecting to the battery BMS for automatic management and tracking of battery capacity. This unit has a built-in DC switch for the PV input, but you need external breakers for the AC connections as there are none built in. This is another great package at a very low price. Now for the beast of the three, coming in at a staggering $8,250, the SolArk Limitless 15K LV. It has more than double the rated power at 12,000 watts or 6,000 watts per phase on batteries. With combined PV input, it can deliver up to 15,000 watts. It's a high-frequency inverter with a whopping peak efficiency of 97.5%. Even its average efficiency is 96.5%. And the idle consumption is the lowest of the three at 90 watts. Its surge load capacity is double its rated capacity at 24,000 watts for 10 seconds and 18,000 watts for 5 seconds. It can take a peak of 30,000 watts for 100 milliseconds. This unit also has 2 AC inputs, but they're at another level. With integrated breakers and very nice lug-style connectors, even the battery input has an integrated breaker. This unit is sufficient to be a transfer switch and power management system for an entire typical house. In a power outage, it can charge the batteries and run the house with PV. And if the batteries get too low, it can automatically start and stop a generator for supplemental AC input. With IP65 and NEMA 3R rating, this unit can be mounted outside if needed. It meets UL 1741 and IEEE 1547 standards, and the California Rule 21, making it the only one of these three to be certified in California. It also has the best warranty of all three at 10 years. The SolArk 15K has a built-in DC switch for the PV input and a max PV input of 19,500 watts, managed through 3 dual-input MPPT controllers. It has a respectable max voltage input of 500 volts and a reasonable operating range from 125 to 425 volts, with a peak input current of 26 amps. And dual connections for each input. You can easily put 2 pairs of strings in parallel on each of the 3 MPPTs. This unit has a rated AC coupled input of up to 19,200 watts. If you have already installed a grid-tied inverter like I have, you would now be able to take advantage of that power even in a power outage. You don't have to have battery storage, but if you do add it, you will need to pair this inverter with a 48-volt battery. To be able to take full advantage of the charge and discharge current, I would recommend starting with at least 3 48-volt server rack batteries. This unit can provide a significant 275 amps of charge and discharge current if you use both battery input connections. It has an RS-485 port for connecting to the battery BMS for automatic management and tracking of battery capacity. This unit has a lot of other features that I haven't mentioned here today. If you have the budget, it's hard to go wrong with the SolArk 15K. So which inverter should you choose? Well, as usual, it depends. For one, there are lots of other options besides these three, not the least of which is the Schneider XW Pro, which I hope to get my hands on one here pretty soon to check out. But this video is more about understanding the options and choices in the split phase space and how to compare them to each other. If you just want the best value split phase option for a solar capable emergency home backup, it's hard to go wrong with the EG4 600EX 48HV. If you want home backup capability and the ability to save money on your utility bills with a grid tie solution, the Bluepower IP6048 is a great value option. If you need California certification, the SolArk 15K is already certified. If you want the ultimate in whole home backup or off-grid capability with every conceivable variation in between, it's hard to go wrong with the Limitless 15K LV. If you want to see a step-by-step install of my simple 120 volt backup for emergency circuits with the Victron Multiplus 2, click here. When I complete my project with the Sungold Power inverter, I'll post it right here. I've included a link to all the charts I showed in this video, as well as lots of other helpful information in the description below. As usual, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.